Okay, friends, let's take a step back and look at this Gallup poll from kind of a zoomed out view. The big idea of statistics and what statisticians spend their days doing is studying things called parameters. A parameter is a fancy word that simply means the measure of a population. So a population is simply a large group of something that you're studying. And that, in this case, the Gallup case, that large group is US adults. So the statisticians in Gallup's study want to know what the US obesity rate is in the US adult population. Okay, the problem and the challenge is that in order to know that, you actually have to do what's called a census, which means you have to actually measure every single US adult, or in Gallup's case, I guess, call and talk to every single US adult. Well, I know they didn't do that because they didn't call me. And I bet everybody watching this video probably also wasn't contacted by Gallup. That means Gallup did not do what's called a census. As a matter of fact, the only large-scale census that I know of is actually happening right now as I make this video. The U.S. every 10 years by the Constitution of our country is required to do a census to figure out the population of the United States. And even the census is having a hard time doing this because it's really hard to count that many people. At the last I checked, I think we have over 325 million Americans in this country. That's hard to keep track of. I mean, I'm sure back in 200 plus years ago when the framers sat down to write the Constitution, it was easy to lean out the front door. There's George Martha. Yes, it's Tom home. Pip, pip, yes. This is fam good. Okay, good, good. And then they write down there's 16 people in the country. Well, nowadays, it's a lot harder. So statisticians actually don't do a census when they need to find out something about a parameter. What they do instead is they take a random sample of that population they're trying to study. We've talked about random samples before. We also mentioned how we didn't like the one Gallup did because it was based on telephone calls. But that's okay. We're ignoring that for now. When a random sample is done correctly in the population, they get their sample, and that sample they can measure. So you might remember when I was reading that news article, it said 28% of US adults are obese. And I said, I might have a bone to pick with that statement. And I do. The bone I have to pick with that statement is when they said 28% of US adults are obese, they didn't mean that. The only way they could have meant that is if they actually measured every single US adult. What they meant was that 28% of the sample they drew was obese. And when I say drew, of course, I mean called on the phone. So they didn't actually measure everybody. They didn't do that census. In their sample, 28% was obese. So you might think to yourself, well, what good is a sample? It's only a piece of the population, to which I respond, yes, that's true. But on average, if you do the study correctly, that statistics value is going to be close to the parameters value. So even though we're never going to know the parameters value, we're never going to know what the actual obesity rate of a US adult is, we can get close to it with the statistics value. But then what does close mean? Close is measured by the margin of error. In the next video, I want to take a look at that 0.2% margin of error that was included and how we apply it to the statistic of 28% to get an idea of the parameter. All right, let's go do it.